The author of many books for young readers, Tina Cho is an elementary school teacher with a master's degree in education and a bachelor's degree in elementary education, having taught for over 20 years. Exploring science through a faith lens, God's Little Astronomer is grounded in research and facts about space while still pointing to God's hand in creating it. So let's talk about it with award-winning author Tina Cho. Welcome, Tina. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So I think every kid loves space. I think it's part of, it's in us. My two young ones already do. So tell us, when did your love for astronomy begin? Can you remember it?
I was teaching sixth grade at the time, and one of the units I had to teach was about space and the stars, and I didn't know too much about it, so that made me go research, and I found someone at church who was an astronomy buff, so that kind of awakened my love.
I love that you brought up church, someone in church, because I think a lot of times people think of astronomy and they think of science and they can't see how they combine, how they collide. So can you talk a little bit about, how your faith background might have skewed your view at first, and then as you researched more, what did you discover? How is faith and science intersecting for you?
Well, I was brought up in a Christian home, so I was taught, God created the world. And then, in school, we learn about evolution, and in a lot of the books, it talks about how evolution made everything and not God. So, but the Bible has a lot to say about science, and especially astronomy, how the world was created. So, I want the two to be together in a book.
Yeah, I love it. And there's a line in the book that I really like that says, each star is a guide to God's goodness and love for you. What does that mean?
Well, God knows each star. He knows their name. And more importantly, He knows who we are. He knows our name. He cares for us. He guides us and shows us, a path to take in life.
Yeah, I like that. So in addition to a scripture reference that we see on each spread of the book, there's also a fact. So what's a fact about the stars or space that you think readers are going to be really excited to discover?
This one's a little bit hard. Maybe like the difference between asteroids and meteoroids and meteorites, and that's always been, I always mix them up. So things like that.
Can you explain that? Elaborate more, what that is? Yeah.
Like the asteroids are like giant. Well, some are giant and some are small, the rocks that you see in space. But then, they come into our atmosphere, and then some fall to the Earth, and then we see them as a meteor shower.
I love that you're learning this, and then you all of a sudden wrote a book about it. How did that progression happen? How did you go from being a teacher who writes books for young readers to learning about astronomy yourself, and now there's a book about it?
I write a lot about different topics, so I'm always, researching, and then whatever the subject is, I'll research it and then try to put it into language for little kids, because I teach kindergarten.
Yeah. So the publisher was like, what book do you want to do next? Or did you come with the idea yourself?
So the editor put out a wish list that she wanted some science faith-based books, because there are a lot on the market that are for babies in science, but they're not faith-based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. So it really is an important criteria, genre, I guess. There's not a lot out there. Yeah. Okay, so with the advancements that we have now in technology for viewing space, with all the talk about space discovery and exploration, I feel like this is such a timely book for that. It is actually proving more and more that there's so much still to discover. So what is your hope? How do you hope this book's going to inspire little astronomers?
I hope that it will inspire all children, especially minorities, that they can see themselves going to space or just studying about space.
Yeah, so there's actually more than just let's look in our own backyard, but you too could grow up to go and be part of this.
Right.
Wow. I love that heart behind it. The book has, we talked about this, Bible verses. And actually, what I like too is near the end of the book, there's a real focus and almost a conclusion on evidence, not coincidences, but evidence that points to how God made Earth for us. So what is your favorite Bible verse or part of the book that ties creation to faith and our purpose?
I think it was one of the verses, the last verse in Psalm 8, 3 and 4. When I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you've set in place, what are mere mortals that you should think about them, human beings that you should care for them. God cares about the universe, and we are even more important to him, so he cares even more for us.
Okay, last question. I want to get practical, talking to families right now, because I love that you're calling on little astronomers. You're inviting kids to look up and to learn about God's creation. So how can families be really intentional about this kind of discovery?
Well, when the night is clear, you could take your kids out for a night walk and just look up at the stars. You don't need to buy a fancy telescope. You can just point things out. Oh, there's a planet. You could look up on Google and see what planets are in the sky and visible.
The book has dwarf planets in there. You point out certain constellations too. So there's so much fact. There's a lot to actually learn and to do in the book. But I do love, again, that you tied in with scripture and God's plan for all of us. So really appreciate this. We're gonna get a telescope, our family, because I know our kids are just so into it. But like you said, when the night is clear, you can really see God's handiwork, can't you?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tina Cho, again, God's little astronomer. Appreciate your time, Tina.
Thank you so much for having me.